Okie dokie, is it recording? Yes. Well, here we are. And as you can tell, well, maybe not yet. And as you can tell, I have been busy. So very busy. And it's perfect. Now, I had mentioned once before to a group of technical players that this would be the perfect way to go about decorating Spawn. And at that point, I guess they all disagreed. They said that it was impossible, nobody could have the time for that. So I guess I successfully proved that I'm a nobody. And with one more block, I am finished. Now, this right here was a lava lake. And of all the lava lakes in my spawn, it went just a block deeper. A block too deep even. Down into the void. So I'll probably return to break out these last two bedrock and make it a nice clean 3x3, just for the sake of having it in existence. No real other reason. And I can be pleased with it as it is. Because, well, this top layer, this bedrock here, will have glass in all of the places that there's currently air. Stained glass, which of course doesn't exist in my world just yet, but once it does, I'll return and finish the task. Now, in those spots where the bedrock is over the top of something else, I don't have glowstone under those. It's just smooth stone, cobble, whatever I happen to have on hand, to fill in whatever air gaps that I could find to make it as solid as possible. So I do believe I can be satisfied with it in its current form. Creeper? No creeper. Good. Now, oh, right. I realized that in this version I can actually place cocoa beans as an object in the world, so of course I did. And although I haven't made an automated farm for them just yet, it's very nice to know that when the time comes that I can build some kind of a dispenser-based farm that shoots bone meal at it, that I can build that and just come back here for the materials necessary to stock it up for its first running. So I'm extremely satisfied. Now, down here as we can see, right there, over there, over there, there's been quite a few in the way of lava lakes that cut their way through the bedrock. So, Ray was right when he said that there are a great number of versions that allow that to happen. As it even happens, well, from my perspective, in several future versions, which is interesting, to say the least. However, one side effect of all that work is that the oceans became significantly more dangerous. Because there are far more squid than there used to be. Come on, go, go, go. There we are. And I'm not sure if anyone really remembers, but squid are my ancient nemesis. I don't see them like you see them, as non-hostile little floaty blobs, but I see them as the hidden nemesis, that which lurks beneath and waits for unprepared, weary travelers to happen by, such that they can smash their boats and attempt to drown them due to fatigue. Perhaps in time, I need to build a farm, such that I can get my revenge on them, and also more easily extract their ink, because that will certainly be a good day. Until then, they remain little more than a constant threat, which is looming invisible on the horizon, waiting to drag me down. Now, as you saw, those glass pillars back there, they were marking something. A stronghold. It was the first one I had generated in my world, and up ahead is another one just the same with glass pillars, marking the second of the strongholds that I generated in this world. And then south of spawn, south of that item storage hall, that one is also the third of the strongholds that generated in my world. And as anyone knows, who knows, the lore of what is now older versions, in 1.8 and below, there were only 3 strongholds. It wasn't until after the combat update that they were, 128 strongholds in a world. But the ones that have these pillars, they go back to 1.9 pre-release 3, the first version where such an object existed, and they were the game's old way of showing you where they were before the Eyes of Ender could do it. And their existence marks at something that a person could have done, and I most definitely did do. But soon, off in this direction, is another stronghold in a location that used to be a desert and is now a swamp, and I'll eventually go load those chunks, because there, near that stronghold, lies something very special, which also means that there's 4 strongholds in my world, which means that that one that I had pointed at that has the donut over the top is actually the 0th stronghold of my world, and that one only spawns in version beta 1.9 pre-release 3. The ones that spawned in pre-release 4 and later won't have the glass pillars, and also won't have been eligible for the harvest. Now, there's something when I was making my world that I knew that I needed. A great number of things, some rare and some common. And of those common things that I needed, one that I knew existed was sand. And there is not enough sand in a desert nor all the beaches of the world to suit my desires, which meant that I needed a sand generator. And some of these sand generators were very difficult to find. I can't even remember the name of the fellow who had showed this sand generator to begin with. But when he was showing his version of the sand generator, he had 4 repeaters in a circle, they were powered, he would break and relay the redstone line, and that would give the signal necessary. But he had to break and relay it in a rather specific looking way, with really precise looking timings. And I went ahead and rebuilt it, and then used my best judgment to build a pulse generator that would input the signal that was necessary to power it. And down below there's a lever into a torch tower, which will turn off this torch, but leave this redstone line powered via this block, via this repeater. It also goes upwards and depowers this repeater here, which allows this piston to start retracting, but also allows this torch to light, which means soon as the piston is finished retracting, it immediately extends again, and it potentially removes, well, a portion of the signal. It might be 6 game ticks, but I really doubt it. Piston timings were strange and different back then, so guessing at how much signal was removed is impossible for me. But the retraction and immediate extension from this piston in through this repeater circle is translated down below. And these sticky pistons will pick up the sand and hold it for just a moment until the sand schedules that it's going to drop, and then it immediately pushes it back down after that moment has happened, which duplicates it and coincidentally breaks one of the sand, and then the rest of it just sweeps it off into a centralized location. And I got so much use out of this that it became more than just a temporary build in my world, but instead a permanent relic of things gone by and the footsteps that I've traveled, such that those who will travel in my footsteps in the days of the future have at least one more resource to look to for all of the things that you could do. Now, while I was in that version, Beta 1.9 pre-release 4, my buddy KK had pointed at another sand generator, a 1.2 sand generator, almost as a taunt and a challenge, that this one, which is designed by Test 1E37 something numbers, is the fastest sand generator that could ever be built, period. And, of course, with such news, I had to build it. I went ahead and added in a few extra repeaters and lines and stuff to control the block breaking, but other than that, it's basically just his work translated off into my world. And when I push the button over there, it will retract one of these pistons and allow the cart that used to be on this slanted rail to slide forward across both of these detector rails, causing each of these pistons to extend in sequence, inputting a signal into this pulse generator. Now, just one pulse generator on its own is enough to actually power the system and duplicate some sand. However, both of them, with that specific timing apart from each other, doubles the speed of the sand generation, which is absolutely amazing in so many ways. And it gave me a great large quantity of sand extremely fast. So fast that it was laggy. It was before items could stack, so it was very laggy. The only thing that I felt bad about was that I forgot to build a small house full of double chests full of sand that would of course be stocked by this. So I went ahead and made up for that error, and it was the exact same fellow, Test Numbers, I found in his test world, that he had made a 1.3 sand generator. And it works off of a similar property to all those others. It basically pushes the sand up on a short pulse, and then as the sand schedules to fall, it yanks it back down, and that causes the sand to duplicate, which is really kind of cool. So of course I went ahead and built it. And I may have slid a wire here and there over a little bit, added in a little bit extra so that I could have the flappy trapdoors to break all the sand. But other than my minor modifications, it's basically just his work. And its clock is this pair of pistons working against each other, pulling its signal off into these pulse generators. And, well, this piece of obsidian. It's not necessary. And it's produced a great large quantity of sand for me. As the sand duplicates, it stacks up, and once it reaches a height of 3 here, it gets pushed over and gets broken down there. And it is a beast of a machine. It's not nearly as fast as some of the others, but it's still pretty darn fast. And I love it. It really, really serves its purpose. And its existence is more of a testament to the power of the people in the past than anything else. Now, of course, I made a little chapel to put everything inside of, and it's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. It gave me a chance to play around with some different block palettes. A little bit of gravel, a piece of cobble, a cracked brick. It is okay. More of just a chance to put more blocks in my world. But speaking of blocks, there's this, which is for generating a different gravity block. Now this one I didn't find in Test World, and I could only find references to it here and there, and a single, somewhat poorly made tutorial. I can't remember the fellow's name, but if anyone needs it in the future, I'll definitely do my best to recreate it in such a way that it becomes an easy build. I only had to modify tiny portions of it, and I can't remember which portions I had modified to bring it to life. And it works in the same way as all the others. In this case, it pulls the glass block down, and as the egg, I believe, starts to schedule that it's about to fall, it zero ticks the glass back up into position while also pushing from behind, breaking the block off of there, and allowing it to set at the same time, duplicating it. So as we can see, it's really quite nice, and although it's not perfect, I managed to get a good deal of use from it, although I did have to dig down underneath the upwards facing pistons so that I could collect the blocks which are glitching through it, because graphically they're not appearing where they should be. They're technically underneath, I think. So it would be difficult to fully automate the collection of the eggs from here, but it's about as good as it could be, and there's only a small chance of the eggs breaking during operation, and it seems to be almost entirely random, which is interesting to say the least. And then of course I've got some stored away for the future. Now, inside of here, the sand hut, I've got 8 times 4 times 10 chests, which is 320 plus 1/2. So I've got a great number of chests of sand, and even if I'm a little careless and splurge to some degree with my sand use, it should last me a great long time. And if I'm a little more careful about how much sand I use, it should last me well into version 1.8. So that should be perfect to keep me going until I can build something better. And then on the note of the dragon eggs, once again, the building isn't amazing, but it does give me a chance to mess around with different block palettes and find out what I like and what kind of works together, and a chance to use some of the spore block here and see what looks at least halfway decent with it. And I've got 8 times 4 times 2, which is 64 double chests. Well, 64 and a half. Technically 65 and a half if you count the one that's way over somewhere else. So that should be more than enough in the way of dragon eggs to keep me going for a great long time. However, even if I'm careful and judicious about collecting them back up again while using them for their Easter egg property, some of them will get lost into the fifth dimension, which I'll just have to be okay with. It's a sacrifice that's been accounted for, and that'll last me until I can make more. It'll last me a good long time. And then, of course, these buildings alongside these other three kind of helps round out the collection in some degree. As, what's inside of this one? Is it netherrack? Yeah, great deals of netherrack. Great block. It's a great scaffolding. It's great as a cosmetic block, and as a smeltable block for that precious nether brick block. Oh, right. You can see a small gray line at the very apex of that building. That's actually a nether brick slab. I created it on the machine over there on the side of the tree farm. Oh, God. And then these ones. They are seamless double slabs. Value number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They may not look seamless right now, but they are indeed the seamless double slabs of every color, which is very nice to have them in existence in this world. This building, it has not yet taken on its full appearance. You can't see what I see in my mind's eye, and although in its full state it won't be perfect or great, but it'll most certainly catch the eye, which is all that I aim for. Now, I need, in 1.4, to revisit over here, because behind the village that I took my villagers from is a swamp hut, which will not generate naturally, but I can force it to generate. And of course, those villagers, they went into that skyscraper. Some of them went over here into my villager breeder to stock it up, and then they came out of my villager breeder to stock up the iron farms, which I probably need to, well, I could make additional platforms, and that would speed it up significantly, but it's already pretty fast, so I might leave it alone as is. And from the perspective of the AFK point of the water towers, it's just perfectly placed to where the golems wander out of loaded chunks and enter unloaded chunks, getting written to the disk, taking their potential lag off of the game until I revisit, and then, go and kill the golems at least every so often to keep them from stacking up too bad. But I have something better in mind. I have some notes written down for something truly amazing I can do. Now, of course, some of the villagers from this breeder went back over there near that village so that they could stock up the trading area near that large sugarcane farm. And how do I go over this next point? On the idea of chunk regeneration, it was something that I had noticed that they mentioned in a patch note had been removed. So I went looking just before the patch note and figured out some versions where it worked in, and that went into my great book of notes about things that could be done. And later on another guide of things that you could do, they mentioned that it was only available in a snapshot version, and then the note got changed to where it was only available in early 1.4 versions, and I don't know if they've altered the notes to say that you can also do it all the way through 1.4.6, And, I mean, that's about all that I'm gonna check. I don't need to correct somebody else's notes, really. But I can't help but wonder if their notes were inadvertently originally based on mine, and if they were just working off of an incomplete copy, because my original notes got deleted alongside so many other things. Like, oh god, like one of my sand generators for 1.8 and above. It, very special little thing, and one of my friends remembered its existence, and I went through all of my testing worlds trying to find it, and I realized what testing world it was on. And I don't have permission to go back on that testing world. So, if you manage to find it, you can claim it as your own. That much will be an easy thing to just give away. And maybe in the future, when I need it again, I'll go about rebuilding it and make sure to actually publish that one as well, because it was different. But until then, I've got many, many models that I can use, many different models that I can use, and I don't think it's going to be necessary for me to try and figure out that one model again, although I may not be able to live with myself unless I try to remember what the pattern is one more time. So that's a task for the future. But of course, I love the idea of looking for things that people find to be a hindrance and finding a way to put some use to them. For example, when entity cramming was added to worlds, everyone was turning it off in their world through the use of, cheats. And I thought that it was such a pity. So I put it to use. I put it in my fortress farm. I showed that it inflicted damage so fast that Blaze could be brought down to a one-hit kill, with a sword at least, just by falling through a stack of 24 of them. And then I saw so many others in my exact same words advertising it as being just as such, when it was only me and one other fellow who no one liked, who were the ones who really discovered that it was so useful and were the first to intentionally make use of it as a mechanic to damage mobs. But even if he did use all the way down to my own words, taunting of, oh look, you know, this mechanic is meant to slow people down. This mechanic has stopped so many people. Look at me. I've managed to take advantage of it. I'm putting it to good use. Used word for word by another person who I guess just read my words and then repeated them because they sounded so good. But as I mentioned, there was something that I had done, those glass pillars. This is not naturally generated, and it was one of the artifacts that I needed in my world. And as we can see right now, it doesn't have its ability. It isn't doing its thing. It'll be many moons before it gains that ability, but that's okay, because this one only serves to complete the area up there. It was something that I had looked to build for so very long and just hadn't done out of laziness. And now I have. So, shall we step through together? Alright, are the Endermen pissed off at me? Not yet. Now, I love the area out here. I need to revisit and break out those bedrock and move these crystals away because they are precious not replaceable. I can technically find something very similar to them at some other point later on, but these ones are unique, and I won't let them die. Now, as for the build itself, this upper donut has been placed right at the perfect location, such that when gateways do generate, they'll embed themselves into the material of this platform, making them right at the perfect level for throwing a pearl through, making it much safer for me. And the fact that it's 2 layers thick means that even if that one glitch happens, where you come back a block too low, then you'll be fine, because, well, I'll be fine, because I won't fall through. Now, down here, this platform will make a perfect arena for fighting the dragon, because it's set in the perfect location that, that wall down there will be bisected by the pillars when they appear, adding just a bit more in the way of texture and interest to what would otherwise be a smooth and uninteresting wall. And up here, this is set directly over where the portal will eventually lie. I might break out one more block and make it a block lower, or maybe not. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But that's a problem for future me to decide on. Now, naturally it will be a little bit of lost material, because it will delete some of this stuff, but I do believe I've got plenty in the way of extra chests of endstone to get out of here eventually, and put somewhere a little safer. Now, of course, down below is a 17 by 17 chunk area grid, which I've built, and oh boy did it take a long time, but I've done it so many more times in the past that grinding it out one more time really wasn't that bad, and I like it a lot. The reason that the 17 by 17 chunk area is special is something akin to when the dragon is generated, first appears, something like that. It checks this entire area. It loads this entire area to check it, which is interesting. What's it check it for? Portals. Return portals. So you could say that in a sense, I've got my end dimension more or less prepared for the point that I have the combat update already. Now this, I love it. Who invented it? King, Queen, something or another? God, I've already forgotten. But his design is perfect, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's wonderful. The only thing that I've changed is making it a little bit beefier. Even at that, well, I guess I need to add an off switch eventually. I'll definitely do that sometime soon-ish. But other than that, it's going to stay in my world forever. I'll never tear it out. I can build better, later, elsewhere, but this, it's a testament to what I've seen and been through and all the things that I've done and learned. Its thickness, its added extra thickness just adds gravitas to the entire build. Its simplicity is elegant. It's perfect. I love it. I'll change the bottom end eventually, by some degree, but that is for future me. So until then, I'll probably, definitely be coming back sometime soon with books. Oh god, books. What version is it? Is it 12W49A. I think that's the version with anvils. You can put you can make books in that, enchanted books in that version, and use an anvil to put them on any item, and there is but a single item that I wish to do. A sword with silk touch. The fellow who got me into this game had shown me a sword with silk touch. It was the perfect tool for using on cobwebs, and he made it out as though the item wasn't even special, which makes me think he must have at some point in time been in that version. That's the only way he could have gotten it. And once I realized just how special of an item that it was, that no matter how long I went, I never saw it, no one had ever heard of it, and then after my research was complete and I had found how to create it, it was obvious that I needed to make at least one. I needed to. And so I will. At least one. No matter how I have to go about doing it, I will find a way to load that version. Even if it's only for an hour. And so we find ourselves back here. Now, I had mentioned that it's over in this direction, but there's one more stronghold, which I had built near, and it was potentially the first true base that I had built in my world. This is an unloading stream. The chunk boundary is right between these two blocks here, which means this one's in a chunk, this one's in a chunk, and they have one block. Between these two blocks is the chunk boundary. I am positive of that much. And then out further, inside of the short gap in between cobbles, evenly between those cobbles, is the chunk boundaries once again. You can kind of see it as a bit of a graphical defect in the water. And then, of course, each of the water is traveling over the chunk boundary, with none of them leaving a dead zone at the chunk boundary, just to make sure that items are never lost out there. And over really the years now, this has been very, very valuable. Now, the distance itself does change over time through the versions, so you will eventually need to shorten and or lengthen it, depending on what you're doing. But overall, the basic pattern doesn't need to be changed. You'll just break out a portion and block off the water in another portion. That's it. But now, I can pretty much call so many of my previous projects complete. I've done so much of what I've already set out to do. Oh, netherwort. I need to build a farm for netherwort. I can do overworld netherwort now. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, yes. I definitely need to do that. I won't forget to do netherwort. I definitely need to do that in the overworld. Yes. But it leaves it to where, when I build my bigger farms, I can come back through and harvest from these smaller farms. You know, be they automatic or manual, they'll provide all the material that I ever need towards building the bigger farms. Technically, on their own, they could provide the material just for everyday common use. But having them is half of the battle. You know, having everything on farmable status to where I can come back and take what I need when I need it is all that's really needed, because that makes it to where the process becomes much quicker once the bigger tasks come time to be done. And I guess I do need to come back with a little bit in the way of some leaf block, some dirt, to finish out these last few bits over here. Maybe chisel away a couple of blocks at the edge, that way I can get rid of the graphical errors. Maybe place up some thing in the way of a wall, even if it's just smooth stone or bricks. Just something relatively uniform for the walls to make them clean. But that won't take much time. It's not for right now. I might go back and get a few more villagers. This version is so good for getting villagers. Version 1.3. So good for getting villagers. I can give them any order that I want. Any order that I want. That's so powerful. But for now, off in this direction, beyond the horizon that I've never traveled. Well, I guess I've traveled to some similar areas out there in various directions, but never intentionally. It was the time that I flew a few thousand blocks via just a single piece of TNT. I might touch on that later, so that I can show a machine that could potentially be built if you were exceedingly lucky, or if you managed to figure out precisely how to cause it right where you needed it, or maybe had an accident and it formed at a position that was good enough for you to go about building the machine. Of course, I mean, you'll probably die in the process of building the machine, but that's where the fun is, in trying to stay alive. You have to try to survive. After all, when there's too many chickens, too many creepers, or too many Endermen, well, perhaps in some day in the future you'll see what I mean about each of those statements. But for now, there's a place that is a stronghold. It was a desert. It's now a swamp. And in version 1.4, it'll become something truly amazing that every technical server wants. Well, is it every? I'll say that it's every. So, until then, I suppose it's time to let you get some sleep. Because, for now, I have not much more to show. I hope you have a nice night. Sweet dreams.